in 2013, crowdfunding video games was all the rage, and gamers across the globe, including ourselves, threw money at anything that had any hope of recapturing our lost childhoods.
Yes, of course, we're all a bit jaded now after seeing more than a few crowdfunded campaigns fall apart. But one of the more successful ones was for Hyper Light Drifter, which raked in just under $650,000. It's out on PC and Mac now, with console versions to follow.
Yes, and it appears none of that money went into a tutorial.
Yes, Hyper Light Drifter does nothing to help you figure out what is going on. But that's on purpose and arguably part of its charm. More on that in a bit, but first, Bajo, I found the introduction to this game quite affecting. The creeping 80s sci-fi style soundtrack is by composer Disasterpiece, who also worked on Fez and the excellent horror film It Follows.
Yeah, the music and the art of that intro is straight out of something like Another World. You begin as a cloaked figure surrounded by corpses. You're coughing up blood as a strange digital black corruption chases after you.
You awake to find yourself in a strange town with no direction of where to go or what you should be doing. Vendors and townsfolk don't speak your language, and stories are told with pictures instead of words.
Lead designer Alex Preston designed this game as an homage to the SNES days, in look and feel as well as world design. Progression is slow, and enemies are very difficult. You also have very little health, medkits are scarce, and your only initial ability really is a dash, which can get you into trouble as much as it gets you out of it. First thing I did, Hex, was walk into the forest. Dogs. Dead. Again and again. Then I took a break.
Yeah, it takes a good few hours of exploring before you can figure out how this game works. But you just have to get out there and push through a few zones and enemies until the mechanics and ideas reveal themselves.
Hex, I love that Alex has gone for this retro style, but I do think some retro things belong in the past. This exploration is so frustrating and confusing. You need to find these gems to unlock doors and progress. But there's no GPS, the map just stays static as you move through it, so you get a general idea of where the gems are, but finding the path to them is another story.
Yeah, it's not the easiest of games to explore, is it? The 2D flat art style is a little hard to decipher at times, and falling really takes a good chunk of your limited health away. You do have to spend quite a bit of time creeping along the edges of maps or taking leaps of faith. But once again, this is on purpose, and I'm sure loads of people will really love this old school style.
Yeah, look, if that hardcore exploration was for secret items, then that would be fine, but I just felt like some of those critical paths were so hard to find.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's how you approach this game. You can't rush it or move in to clear a whole zone and then just move on. It's about taking out a few mobs, maybe going back to town to reward yourself with a hard-earned upgrade, and then maybe going into a different zone on the other side of the map for a while and just doing the same thing. The combat feels quite satisfying though, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You've got a sword attack, a gun, a dash, and eventually you get bombs. There are some advanced moves, like combining a dash with a sword attack, but mostly success is about avoiding damage because you're so weak.
Yet healing takes time too, and it's not always something you can do in the heat of battle. You're often trapped in rooms full of enemies combined with environmental problems, which will require some tricky legwork to survive. Attacking gives you power for your guns, you're always whacking stuff to shoot stuff, while dodging stuff.
Eventually, you start to learn enemy attack patterns and push on their weaknesses. I really liked the creature design, and the controls are simple, but there's still plenty of depth to the combat. And when you clear a room without getting hit once, it feels so good.
I think the brutal gameplay is something you just have to accept from the start. But once you get over that initial hump of figuring out how to dash about effectively, it is rewarding. You just can't be greedy. Get in, 3 hits, and then get out.
Oh yes, an ancient video game strategy, but a good one.
Yeah, and at least the checkpoints are forgiving. And, you know, there's very much a one more go feel to these encounters.
Yes, but sometimes you'll checkpoint on very low health without enough medkits, and that makes some of the fights more about luck than actual skill. Hex, I thought I would absolutely love this game. It's right up my alley, but I just found it really frustrating. All that old school exploration drove me crazy. I do love not knowing how a game works, and I think that approach to discovery can be really interesting, but just wandering around finding some door or location that I missed, Blurg. I don't know, Hex. Back in the day, I was more of a Sega guy than a SNES guy, so I spent more time with Sonic than Link. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, maybe. You know, I don't mind wandering around that much. I think just because of that incredible soundtrack, and I just love the ideas in this game. Overgrown ruins and strange, dormant, giant creatures. Well, what are you giving it, Bajo?
I'm gonna give it 2.5 stars.
I'm giving it 3.5.
Well, Hex, shall we go find Nick Boy for a chat about VR?
Yeah, he's probably streaming. He's always streaming.
Always on the internet. Oh, back in my day, yeah, Sonic.